Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments, and thank you for joining me. So you guys know I am planning a series of videos on the graded video game marketplace as we prepare to enter the year 2025. Or possibly, if you're already watching this video in 2025, the future welcomes you. As Sega would say, welcome to the next level, right? Wasn't that their most famous ad tagline of the 1990s? Everybody remembers that, even more than the Sega screen. Welcome to the next level. Well, in this video, I am going to talk a little bit about what's been going on in the graded video game scene. Is this market ripe for investment? Have we hit rock bottom yet? What's going on with prices? Where I think prices are going to go? Because if you follow any of these markets, if you do any research on any of the big boy auction sites like Heritage, you're going to see this market is pretty much still all over the place. But there are signs that the market is finally starting to bottom out. Now, does that mean that prices are going to go exponentially higher in the future? I honestly can't say for sure because this is a very speculative market. But what I can tell you, and this is probably going to surprise some of you, there obviously is some opportunity in this market if you know where to look. So I wanted to do this video just to go over some recent auction results before we go fully in to talking about this market, how to analyze it, how best to play it. That's going to be coming up in other videos, but I do at least want to talk about some recent sales and compare them to some past sales. Now, every time I do a video like this, I always get accused of picking data that suits my purposes. I always love that. Look, I'm going to put the invitation out there. If you guys really want me to do like a 3-hour live stream where we go through and all is what we do is analyze auction sales, I might be willing to do that provided I have the time. But I want to warn you, you guys are probably going to get very bored. And I would not anticipate a video like that to get a lot of views. Now, maybe I'm naive. You guys are correct when you tell me that I am very naive when it comes to YouTube and understanding the YouTube algorithm. I've said this before. When I started this channel, it was never, ever my intent to get a shit ton of subscribers. I keep telling you guys, most likely this channel will never, ever have 100,000 subscribers or more than 100,000 subscribers because I teach the truth on this channel. I teach collectible finance in its purest form. And unfortunately, a lot of the hype-driven Timmys, Kimmys, Poindexters, other YouTube content creators out there, they can't handle that. They need to be told that they should go all in diamond hands in these markets and they're going to be rewarded financially into the future. And unfortunately, in a lot of these markets, yeah, you can diversify into them. You can make money in these markets, definitely over the short term, potentially in certain cases over the long term. But you have to use caution. You have to understand finance, economics, and also how the antiques and collectibles trade operates, both over the short term and over the long term. Now, this is where I would get criticized because a lot of people are probably thinking I'm going to tell you to go buy an S&P 500 index fund instead. I'm not going to say that in this video. What I am going to tell you, if you're financially established, if you're on the road to becoming financially established, antiques and collectibles can be a great asset to diversify into, provided you understand the risks. The one thing that I do have to say before we go any further is remember, these items are all speculative. It doesn't matter how new they are to the collectibles or antique scene. They don't have any underlying cash flows. When you invest in something like an S&P 500 index fund, or if you want to invest in the company Coca-Cola, you go to the market, you buy shares of stock in that company. You have direct ownership in that business. You have access to a little bit of the profits that that company generates, and they pay you those profits in the form of a dividend, pretty much on average 4 times per year, once per quarter. That's what I mean when I tell you guys that financial assets have underlying cash flows. Antiques and collectibles do not. So therefore, these are more high-risk speculative assets. Always remember the golden rule. The golden rule, whenever we're talking about assets that do not have underlying cash flows, This could be collectibles, it could be cryptocurrency, it could be antiques, whatever it is. You need to understand that you're relying solely on the greater fool theory. Meaning, if you buy something for $50 and you hold on to it, and you notice that other comparable items that you have are starting to accelerate in value on the secondary market, where now they're selling for 75 or 100, if you go and sell that item that you paid $50 for in the open market, and you make a profit on that item, it is because of the greater fool theory in practice. Demand increased for that item. Someone was willing to pay more than you, what you originally paid, to acquire that item on the secondary market. And as a result, you profited from that transaction. You made more than your original $50 back. That's the greater fool theory in action. So now that I said all that, we're almost 6 minutes into the video, let's talk about some recent game sales. Now, believe it or not, some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, and I will put a disclaimer when we get to these, were items that I was actually interested in. So I want to make you aware that I too am active in this market, not just to the degree where some of you out there are paying ridiculous amounts for graded video games still in the year 2024, heading into 2025. I'm not at that level, but I like to play in this market a little bit with some of the stuff that I consider to have some more potential in either the near term or the long term. And we're going to discuss that. So first, what I want to start with here is on November 22nd, 2024, a copy of Pokemon Red version for the original Nintendo GameCube, graded by WATA Games in 9.8 condition with an A++ seal rating. This was a mid-production copy released in 1998, sold for $42,500. Now, that may sound like a lot, and don't get me wrong, $42,000 and some change for a Nintendo Game Boy game that was made in 1998, yeah, that's nothing to laugh at. But this similar game sold on August 23rd, 2024, and again, this was a Pokemon Red version, WATA Games, 9.8 condition, A++ seal rating, and this was a mid-production copy, sold on Heritage for $118,750. Now, all these prices include the buyer's premium. This means the person that bought this game on August 23rd, 2024, for close to $119,000, one just sold for a little under $43,000 several months later. Do you guys understand why this market is so inherently risky? It is extremely speculative. And to prove this to you guys, if we look at graded coins, if we look at graded currency, you don't see these price variants between similar objects being sold auction to auction, month to month. That's how you're able to gauge that this is a very speculative market. This is exactly why I do this channel, to warn you of markets like this, so that if you're somebody who says, you know what, if I'm going to pay $100,000 or more for a video game, I need it to hold its value at the very least, this is probably not a market for you right now. Now, if you're somebody, and I'm not going to judge, I have clients of mine that come to me for my consulting services in the antiques and collectibles trade. They make $3, $4, $5, $6 million per year. They're very successful. I have a lot of clients that are CEOs that utilize my services. If you're a CEO that says to me, hey, Sean, I just want to recapture my youth. I'm okay with the volatility in this market. I'll take my chances. And you don't mind losing $50,000 or $60,000 on some of these games potentially, by all means, you do you. Am I going to spend $100 and some thousand for a game that could easily sell for less than half that a couple of months later? No, I would rather put my money in graded coins, graded currency, or even in some cases, graded comic books, even vintage Pokemon cards. I consider them to be more stable than a market like this. Now, to be fair, this is only one example. I want to make that very clear. The Pokemon Red that sold for $118,750 on August 23rd, 2024, Then a similar copy sold on November 22nd, 2024 for $42,500. That is an extreme example that shows the volatility of this market. But those of you that keep coming at me saying, Sean, it's Pokemon. It's a blue chip franchise. It's not going to go to zero. You're absolutely right. It's not going to go to zero. But you can still lose money on an item like this. Now let's continue. Let's continue our quest here. Because I do got to bring up an interesting oddity that did sell for a significant sum. There is a copy of Clayfighter, the Sculptor's Cut, in CGC 9.4 condition with an A++ factory sealed rating. For those unaware, Clayfighter Sculptor's Cut was only made available in the US market as a Blockbuster exclusive. It was primarily on the rental market. Well, lo and behold, there are several factory sealed copies out there that have been graded and certified. Now, this copy sold through Heritage Auctions on November 22nd, 2024 for, get this, $175,000, which includes the buyer's premium. Now, to be fair, this is definitely and can be considered a scarce game, especially in factory sealed condition. We can probably, based on what we know right now, how many copies are out there, call this rare. In factory sealed condition, in high grade, 9.4 or higher, this is definitely a rare game. Now, would I pay $175,000 to have this? No, because again, it's a speculative market. And a game like this, just in my opinion, isn't as iconic as, say, a Mario game, a Zelda game, something that really captured the imaginations of a lot of video game enthusiasts out there. Even I would put Metroid, Kid Icarus, Donkey Kong, they would be much more iconic than Clayfighter, the Sculptor's Cut, which was released in 1998 for the Nintendo 64. So I would not be willing to pay $175,000 for this game. That doesn't mean this individual that bought it can't make money on it. If someone comes along and they consign this to auction at some point down the road, or somebody finds out who bought this and they reach out and they say, hey, I'll give you $225,000 for it, or $250,000, this person would have done quite well. Make no mistake. What I am saying, though, somebody like me, who's educated in the antiques and collectibles trade, and also economics and finance, when I look at this item selling for $175,000, it's not worth the risk for me to take on, especially at my age. So this is not something that I would buy. But that doesn't mean, again, that the person who bought this can't make money on it. Now, in all honesty, I do think it is, as I've stated, a risky investment, especially long term. Because again, we're talking about Clayfighter, the Sculptor's Cut, released into the rental market for the Nintendo 64 back in 1998. Clayfighter isn't exactly a top-tier franchise for the Nintendo 64. Let's be realistic here. That honor would go to Mario, Zelda, perhaps GoldenEye. Even Diddy Kong Racing, I would put more iconic than Clayfighter. Now, you may disagree due to, again, the story and rarity behind this, but overall, it's a riskier bet than, say, just going after, like, a factory sealed copy of, say, Diddy Kong Racing or Super Smash Brothers for the Nintendo 64, where you can view other sold listings, what they sold for, and at least come up with a price range that you're comfortable paying for a game like that and understanding the risks. So that is something that I will say about that. And I do want to pretty much move to a copy of Diddy Kong Racing for the Nintendo 64, graded by WATA Games in 9.8 condition with an A++ sealed rating. That sold on November 23rd, 2024 through Heritage Auctions, the same auction, for $4,750. Now, believe it or not, this price wasn't really that bad. As a matter of fact, there was another copy of Diddy Kong Racing sold through Heritage Auctions back on Tuesday, August 9th, 2022, in 9.8 condition with an A++ sealed rating, graded by WATA, and it sold for $4,080. So this copy here actually sold for a little under $700 more, just 2 years later. So you could see, if we're looking solely at that one auction, this item did increase a little bit in value. So you can make an argument here that certain games are starting to bottom out. We're seeing the bottom. We're seeing how low this market can possibly go. Because now you have investors that are sweeping in going, you know what? If a copy of Diddy Kong Racing in WATA Games 9.8 condition with an A++ factory sealed rating, I'm going to throw $4,000 at that game. At least it looks like it's worth $4,000. If that's a mentality that's taking hold in the market, that's going to set a floor for this item going forward. So I'm sure, because I think this way when I invest in a lot of these markets. What is the worst case scenario if I'm allocating capital to this market? And sometimes I'll come across a game where it's like, it's selling for $1,000 and it's in 9.8 condition. I'm going to give you an example in a minute here. And it's like, how many other copies can realistically still be out there in the year 2024 heading into 2025? Case in point, on November 12th, 2024, through Heritage Auctions, a copy of Ninja Spirit, factory sealed for one of my favorite systems of all time. Come on, what is it, guys? TurboGrafx 16. Sold for $1,000, including the buyer's premium. Again, I got to repeat this. A copy of Ninja Spirit, factory sealed for the TurboGrafx 16, graded by WATA Games in 9.8 condition with a seal rating of A++, sold for only $1,000. Now, I'm ashamed to admit this. I actually did put in a bid for this, and my computer locked up, and I wasn't able to keep bidding, so I did not win this auction. But I'll even show you on my screen. You guys can see right over here. You can see I'm actually logged into Heritage right now, and it does show that I put in a bid for this item. So in my opinion, this is going to shock a lot of you guys because TurboGrafx is a very esoteric system. This item was worth it for $1,000. I give a lot of credit to the person that was able to come in and buy this item. Even if you hate factory sealed video games, a 9.8 condition copy of Ninja Spirit for the TurboGrafx 16. Number one, this is an iconic game for that system. And number two, do you have any idea how flimsy the TurboGrafx 16 boxes were that they produced when they put that wonderful jewel case in this horrendous artwork and put it in the cardboard box? Those cardboard boxes were easily damaged. I mean, even just if you would get a game that was factory sealed, a turbo chip game back in the day, the box would easily dent by the time you got it home. The fact that this was kept in 9.8 condition tells me that most likely, I don't have any proof of this, most likely this came from a factory sealed case. Because TurboGrafx 16 boxes are very, very fragile. Now let's talk about another TurboGrafx 16 game that sold. Back on October 19th, 2023, an infamous copy of Castlevania Rondo of Blood, which was released for the PC Engine. Remember, this was never released in North American markets. This was pretty much released in Japan by Konami. Graded by WATA Games in 9.8 condition with an A+ sealed rating, sold for $3,000. Now, in my opinion, believe it or not, there are a lot of factory sealed copies of Castlevania Rondo of Blood out there on the market. There also is a well-known reproduction fantasy piece that was made by PCE Works back in the day. I do believe there was some controversy at one point where WATA Games did, unfortunately, incorrectly grade one of those fantasy pieces, and I don't know if they made it right. I'm assuming they did, but that caused a lot of controversy. Still, this game really isn't that rare, and I want to make that very clear. Rondo of Blood, even in factory seal condition, is readily available, and proof of the pudding is a similar copy of this game in 9.8 condition with an A+ sealed rating came up for bid on December 12th, 2024 through Heritage, and it only sold for $2,187.50, which does, of course, include the buyer's premium. So you kind of have to look at this market and take it for what it is. You really have to analyze the rarity, the speculative nature of these items, and assess the risk properly. Let me give you another example. I am a huge fan of Snatcher. Snatcher is probably my all-time favorite Sega CD games. The fact that that game has never been reproduced or even relaunched by a company like Limited Run Games or another publisher just amazes me to this day. I am a huge Cyberpunk fan. I'm a huge Blade Runner fan. I love the burn cycle on the old Philips CDI. So when Snatcher came out, it immediately spoke to me. And make no mistake, if you've never played Snatcher on the Sega CD, it is, in my opinion, one of the only reasons you have to go track down a Sega CD system and play this game in its original form. And I'm sitting here, I'm educated in finance, economics, and I also teach collectible finance on this channel. If I'm telling you to go hunt down and play a video game, that really means it must be a very good, life-changing video game. Snatcher, to me, fits that mold perfectly. Well, here is a copy in 9.8 condition with an A+ seal rating that was released in the United States back in 1994. It sold on November 22nd, 2024 through Heritage for $15,625. Now, I won't lie, the price seems a little bit high to me when we start getting over $10,000 for a game like this, even if it is in 9.8 condition. I start to get a little bit nervous. I think there's a lot of FOMO at play here because, again, this is a speculative market. But the other side of me comes along and says, Sean, you love Snatcher. You know that there's a lot of people out there that probably love Snatcher, that grew up playing this game, or at least getting it secondhand at some point and falling in love with it all over again. So therefore, can't you just imagine a future where this game sells for $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 at some point? And the answer is yes, but again, with a lot of caution. I would not encourage someone to drop close to $16,000 on this game at present time without seeing more auctions for this title to come up for bid. And obviously, with this being a quote-unquote hard-to-find, scarce game, I don't see how many more copies of Snatcher in 9.8 condition, graded by WATA or even CGC or VGA for that matter, are going to come on the market anytime soon. But I wanted to at least cover this game because it is one of my favorites. It really pulls at the heartstrings because, again, I love anything with a cyberpunk element to it. Now, I also do want to talk about, there is another Pokemon game that I want to cover here, and this is Pokemon Gold version, graded by WATA Games in 9.8 condition with an A++ seal rating. Again, this was released for the Nintendo Game Boy Color back in 2000. This copy sold on November 22nd, 2024 for $10,625. And honestly, to be fair, I understand why it sold for that price, but I also have to bring up the fact that back on November 5th, 2022, a WATA Games 9.8 copy with just an A+ seal rating sold for $8,100. So here again, it does show you the volatility of this market. Now, you can make an argument, well, Sean, the one that sold for $8,100 back in 2022 was an A+ sealed copy, This is an A++ sealed copy. So therefore, it makes sense that it sold for like $2,500 more. But in all honesty, as somebody who's educated on third-party grading, I don't think an extra plus in the sealed rating is worth $2,500 being added to the price. So again, there is some speculation here. So I just want to let you all know, this is now 25 minutes that we're into this video. I'm going to stop here, but we are going to be taking some more time to analyze this market because I do think, I agree with anybody that says, well, Sean, don't you think that there's opportunity in this market? The answer is yes, but you just have to understand it's very speculative and you need to be able to tolerate the volatility at hand here. because again, this is by no means an established market, and it's by no means a mature or sophisticated market. This is a brand new market in the trade where prices are pretty much still all over the place, but there is hope because, as I've shown you, certain prices are starting to bottom out. We're kind of seeing the bottom of some of the prices of some of these games. It's happening very subtly. It's not happening all at once. So you still got to use caution. But if you can analyze this market properly, you can make money in this market, both over the short term and over the long term. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you are subscribed to this channel, if you do happen to like my content, just maybe, I'll see you in another video.